that's the background. But hello, and welcome to another episode of the Full Court podcast. My name is Mpho and Tim. I've got Tim Delays here. This is your South African cricket podcast. We go through everything. We talk about everything and everything in South African cricket, domestic cricket, Proteas men, Proteas women, anything that's happening in the South African game. This is your podcast. And for that, thank you very much to all those who've been supporting us throughout the 3 seasons. So please do continue to do the normal. If you're new, please, like on X, subscribe to the Full Quota podcast channel. Yes, the Full Quota podcast channel. Like and subscribe, and then also subscribe to Apple Podcast and Spotify at Full Quota podcast. That's largely written there. I don't come alone. I've got Tim Delays here with me. How are you doing, Tim?
From a breezy and very wet Cape Town, absolutely fine, dude. Absolutely fine. All good.
Yeah, we're waiting for the cold to drop tomorrow morning, which is Friday morning here in Johannesburg. So that's the thing we're bracing for. But yeah, World Cup has started, Tim. T20 World Cup has started, and we're just doing a preview. The Proteas are playing the Netherlands on Saturday at 4:30, which is 10:30 New York time, against a famous foe, a team that has beaten us the last 2 times at World Cups. And it's going to be quite interesting to see if the South Africans can prevent it being a three-peat, a 3rd time. But it's going to be interesting to see, because I think I like this team a lot. They're very, they've got a lot of good cricketers, and it's a really great challenge whenever they come up against a full member nation. And so it's going to be quite interesting, especially on that pitch. But Tim, we have a guest to preview the Netherlands with. I think he was playing in Adelaide the last time they played in the T20 World Cup. He scored, I think, 37 runs and decided to make South Africa look like a team that wasn't ready to play at 10 a.m. in the morning, per the coach, Mark Boucher.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes,
and
so
it was a fitting way for him to end his international career. That's for sure.
Yes. We've got Stephan Myburgh, who is a former Netherlands international cricketer, opening batter. He scored 37 on that day. Stephan, how are you doing?
Paul, how are you doing? I'm doing very well, thanks. Mpho and Tim, thanks for having me on the show. Glad I can have a little bit of time with you guys.
Sure. Let's talk about that game in Adelaide. How did you find it at playing in that game? Because normally you go into the game wanting to win as a sportsman, as a professional, but you know you're coming up against a strong side like South Africa. And as that game goes by, how are your emotions? How are you feeling? How was that day for you?
Well, to be honest, the night before, I went to the coach to tell him that I'm stepping away from the game that I love so dearly. So I knew it's going to be my last hurrah, if you can say it that way. So obviously very excited to play in that game, and you want to do your absolute best. And I must say, with my career, it was finishing on a high, so it was absolutely fantastic. But I can remember straight after the game, still on the ground, giving a hug to Rolf van der Merwe, and we both looked at each other and we were like, oh, it feels good, but it hurts. We both knew that South Africa was out at that stage, and both fellow South Africans who care about the country a lot. It did hurt us a little bit. And the same time, you're a sportsman, so you obviously want to do well and you want to win games whenever you play. And I'm also grateful that I've represented Holland for more than a decade. So obviously, also massive thanks to Holland for giving me that opportunity. And it was a fantastic way to finish my career.
Bittersweet. We love that. Yeah.
Very few legends of the game get to finish on a high like that. It's a huge privilege and a huge nod to your career. It was a bittersweet moment for us on the podcast. We were absolutely devastated, but I think on the day you guys deserved it. I think if you look at the game, we analyzed that you guys absolutely deserved it. So just going forward towards this World Cup, towards this, are you sitting there watching it in your front lounge? Are you sitting there watching every game as a passionate fan? Or are you someone who is busy with other things and if it's on, I'll watch it, but not necessarily watching every dying second of every moment of Holland's fixtures?
No, I do. I absolutely love following the game, especially the World Cups, which is always nice to watch. Unfortunately or fortunately, I'm busy in the corporate world these days, so it all depends whether I can be at home. If I'm at home, I'm definitely the TV will be on cricket. So definitely enjoy watching every minute that I can. I've also already watched a couple of games 2 o'clock at night. Yeah, I'm still absolutely very passionate about the game and love watching it. And I've started doing some Power BI things, and so
Wow.
I like to have a look at their stats as well these days and try and analyze it myself a little bit.
Oh, that's amazing. Did you have any chance to watch the South Africa, was it Sri Lanka game on that New York pitch? Or have you caught anything of that pitch in New York? Because it's been a big talking point.
It has been a massive talking point. Unfortunately, I didn't watch a lot of the game, but I did see the highlights, and it does look like a very bowler-friendly wicket. I think India played there last night as well.
Yes, they did. Yeah.
So yeah, very bowling-friendly wicket. So yeah, it's not a bad thing. I don't think it's a very bad thing. I think we've become so accustomed to being batting friendly wickets and guys in the IPL scoring 200s, where I now think it really tests the batsman's skills out there, which isn't a bad thing at all. I know the crowd maybe wants to see high scoring games, but I actually enjoy watching the challenge now, to be honest.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. So speaking of the Dutch team, obviously you have moved on from the last T20 World Cup, but to a certain extent, there've been a lot of wins since that T20 World Cup and white ball cricket in general, right? The win in India against the Proteas was still another big milestone for Dutch cricket, and it's helped them move on forward to come to this point where we're in a World Cup with 20 teams, and the Netherlands have a chance of necessarily making it into the Super Eights. It's not as though Sri Lanka, Bangladesh, and South Africa are teams that can't be beaten. And so, how have you characterized this period since the last time you played to this team now that's at the World Cup? And what are the key things that have changed or have led them to this moment?
Yeah, no, Holland cricket's definitely on the rise, which is brilliant to see. They got a couple of sponsors in, which help financially. More guys getting contracts, so guys can train on a more full-time basis, which definitely helps. I think the coaching staff has been, for me, the biggest turning point in Holland cricket. In Ryan Cook, very experienced South African, obviously as well. With Ryan van Niekerk and Heino Koens joined them as well. So all three South Africans actually. But it's I think a lot of credit's got to go to them. Also support staff and our fitness trainer, also South African. Physio, also South African. So I think behind the scenes there's been a lot of work, and I think those guys have really had a massive impact in the team.
Yeah, it's now down. I think the team's now down to one South African. I think you've left Essie Engelbrecht.
Yeah, the team's got a couple. So, well, in the squad, there's Carl Klein. He hasn't played yet. So his brother's there, Ryan Klein, but I think he's one of the traveling reserves. He actually had a stress fracture just before. And then you got Essel Engelbrecht and Wesley Baresi.
Yeah,
I
and
hope I'm not missing anyone else.
Michael Lippert, the youngster, the opening batter. from
Levitt,
Saks.
yeah, of course, the
Yeah.
youngster from Cape Town.
Oh, there's a sax
Yeah.
boy. Oh, that's
Yeah.
Yeah.
so more South
He's
Africans
been
to break our hearts.
tremendous. He's been tremendous for Dutch cricket. Very good find. I actually coached him a little bit last year when Ryan Cook was busy with the South African T20. I was asked in Holland to take over some of the coaching responsibilities. So I did the whole winter training with the Dutch boys last year, which was also nice to work with a lot of the youngsters and a lot of the A-team players coming through. So, but I think, massive credit definitely to the coaching staff. I think that's where the turn's been for Dutch cricket. It's become a lot more professional, and guys are all buying into a great culture.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it looks like an upward trajectory. That certainly seems to be the case on all fronts. Hopefully not on the weekend, but in general, that's certainly the case.
Yeah.
Would you look at the squad? You know, you did touch on there. We've touched on a few players, but on the squad, for you, were there any omissions, or was this arguably the best squad that they could have picked for the World Cup?
That's always difficult because there's obviously a lot of guys that also missed out. We do miss Colin Ackerman due to counties, Rolf van der Merwe because of county cricket, and then Tim van der Gugten. He was struggling with a little niggle, but I've seen he's played for the county lately, so I'm not sure. I wasn't part of the selection or anything, so I'm not sure if he wasn't selected or if it was a county-based choice. I know Ackerman and Rolf decided on county cricket. And then we've got Brandon Glover, who's struggling with the injury, who's just come back. And Fred Klaassen, he was in the squad and then got injured. And Daniel Doran got injured. So we're actually missing quite a few players. But a lot of the youngsters are now getting the opportunity and they've all done well for the A side and warm-up games, so fully deserve to be there. So I think everyone that's there fully deserves it. But I think if everyone was fit and available, the squad probably would have been slightly different.
Yeah, I tend to agree. But at the same time, you have to move with the next generation at some point. As good as Ackerman and Roelof have been, there's going to have to come a point where you're going to move to the next generation.
Yeah, 100%.
Yes, we're gonna miss all of you. And we thought at a point when you, Ackerman, and Roelof were going, well, I thought, okay, maybe this time could be the time we could beat the Dutch. But this pipeline is looking good, and I think just take us through some of the players that you think are young, probably unknown to the South Africans, and could cause a problem for South Africa on Saturday. So our fans can always just look out for them and say, hey, Stephan told us about this guy and he's actually pretty good.
Well, to mention his name, I actually forgot that he's South African, or not forgot he's South African. I just missed his name. But Michael Levitt, youngster who's done extremely well. Club cricket in Holland, and he started his international career with a bang, averaging I think close to 40 at a strike rate of 150. And there won't be a lot of footage or anything about him, which could make him very dangerous, I think. That they won't know a lot about him. Vikram Singh, also another 20-year-old who I think he scored a 50 in one of the ODIs against South Africa, left-hander. Then I think Buster Lader is probably one of the best cricketers I've ever played with. Can bowl close to 140, can bat, and probably one of the best fielders I've ever played with. So absolute true all-rounder. So I think the youngsters in the squad they're phenomenal. And also Tim Pringle, I wouldn't pass New Zealand grabbing him soon. His father obviously played Chris for New Zealand. He's also only 21. I think we've got a lot of youngsters who's very, very good. I think Pringle, I won't be surprised if Holland loses him soon to New Zealand. So I would say those four youngsters, you can definitely have a look out for them. And then, a guy like S.I. Engelbrecht, I think he plays a massive role in that Dutch team. He's experienced. He's played in South Africa as well, and he's really got that fighting spirit. He's got that bulldog, that little bit of Rolf van der Merwe in him. And then I'm a big fan of the skipper as well, Scott Edwards. I think he's also. I gave a lot of credit to the to the staff, but a lot of credit's got to go to Scott. He took over the captaincy a couple of years ago, and he's been phenomenal in driving this team. His captaincy is absolutely brilliant, and he's also a very dangerous batsman once he gets going.
Yes, that's really good. It's really awesome. So looking at this World Cup, Stephan, the Dutch obviously will be looking to get out of the group into the Super 8, right? And obviously this is the first game of the World Cup. How do you see, because I think in previous tournaments they've always fallen in games where they were supposed to win, or they'd come up against a full member nation and play really well for one half of the game, and then the other half it's not that great. Looking at the group, it is well, when you look at the group, you've got Bangladesh, you've got Nepal, and you've also got Sri Lanka. Who am I missing?
South Africa.
Ourselves. Yes, ourselves. And teams that you've given a run for their money throughout the past 5 years as well. So is there expectation that the Dutch team should get out of the group and make it into the Super 8s?
Yeah, I think that's another thing that's where Holland's improved. I think those games against South Africa, for example, has given them a lot of belief, a belief that they can actually beat the top guns and go through to the next round. And I think, I'm 100% sure they won't be talking about it now, but there will be belief that they'll go through. I know Brian Cook's very much you play the next game. He doesn't look too far ahead, although that will definitely be one of the goals is to go through. South Africa will be a very tough game. I do think Bangladesh is definitely beatable. I think the previous T20 World Cup, we didn't play well against them at all and just lost. And we were way off our game. So I think that's a game we can win. The one worrying factor for me is our bogey team, Sri Lanka. Like we are for South Africa, Sri Lanka's a bit of ours. We've managed to get the worst score ever in the 2014 World Cup against them. I think it's been beaten luckily by now when we were 30 odd all out, and then 2021 again got bowled out for 40 odd. So Sri Lanka, we haven't had a very good run against Sri Lanka at all. Hopefully this year it's different. I do believe that Holland's got a chance of going through. But if I'm honest, I think Saturday is going to be a tough game for them.
Yes. Interesting. I'm just looking forward to your fixtures, and it's unfortunate for you guys that you're not playing those teams on the New York pitch, because I think if that was the case, you would have a bit more of the ball would be a bit more in your favor. You're playing them in the West Indies, where the wickets are going to be arguably a bit more spin friendly. But what about the game on the weekend? So that New York pitch, don't you think you guys are going to have more of a chance in terms of that pitch, because you guys have got not express pass bowlers, but you've got bowlers who are difficult to score off on that pitch. The guys that are not express pace, they've got lots of changes of pace. You look at those guys that you've got at the top of the opening bowlers. When we played against Sri Lanka, as soon as the pace came off, it was very difficult for us to score.
Yeah, no, definitely. Like I mentioned earlier, it's definitely a bowling-friendly wicket. I think the one thing that might count against the Netherlands, though, is experience. I think, as I mentioned, a lot of very good players, but youngsters. And I don't know how they're going to cope with Nokia, Rabada, and Janssen, to be honest. That's my big worry for Holland, is that I think the pace attack of South Africa is going to test the youngsters. You need a little bit of experience. It might pay off to go play freely and play with without fear of failure. It could possibly help them, but I think that's why I'm a bit worried for the Netherlands, where I think South Africa is going to be too strong as the pace attack. And then I think on the flip side, I think the South African players are actually quite experienced batting lineup. A lot of guys played in IPL, played in different pitch conditions, and I think their experience would actually help them be able to face our bowlers. In saying that, I'm probably just sitting on the fence a little bit here. Bowling friendly wicket, it will help Holland in a way that Holland is not used to playing on the best cricket wickets. Unfortunately, we have not the best weather in Holland, so wickets are normally quite tough to bat on. So for the Dutch team, it might be a flat wicket, where for South Africa, it will be a big challenge. So wicket-wise, I think it suits Holland. It just all depends how the youngsters go against the South African fast attack, I think.
Yeah, and it's going to be quite interesting to see, especially around that pitch. And Stephan, if you were getting ready to play on Saturday to open the batting, what are the couple of things you'd be working on in regards to what you were seeing with that square from your eyes? Because I think outside of the teams that have played there, no other team has necessarily had a chance of playing in New York. So how would you be preparing yourself? And maybe from a coach's hat, how would you be preparing the Michael Levitts of the world and all the batters in the Netherlands to work around this pitch?
Yeah, it's going to be another early start in New York. So captain probably will try and have a bowl first, wherever, on the day, I assume. I think the previous two games South Africa lost to South Africa, they actually bowled first where they should have batted first, and try and bat. The so-called associate nations are not great at chasing, in all honesty. As soon as there's a little bit of scoreboard pressure, the guys just don't play enough cricket at that level to chase. But this time around, I do think if South Africa wins the toss, they'll bowl first, and I think Holland will do the same. In saying that, as a batsman, when I look at a wicket that's a little bit tough, I sometimes feel like you're going to almost have to take a few more calculated risk, although, because you are going to get a ball that's going to do something that you're not going to be able to control and probably get out. So you're going to have to look to be positive and put the bowler under pressure so that the bowler will make probably a little bit more mistakes. At that level, they don't make a lot of mistakes, but the more pressure there is, I mean, bowlers are still human, so the more pressure there will be on them, the more likely they're going to make mistakes. I would say be very proactive in your movements. When I say, be more attacking, it doesn't mean now you're going to just hit boundaries, but it just, in your movements, move around, make the bowler think, put him off, and try and score. Of any bad balls, you're going to have to try and score. So there's a little bit of pressure off you, that the run rate gets away from you, or that you're starting too slowly if you're batting first. So definitely for me, it would be put pressure on the bowlers, move around the wicket, stick to your game as much as possible, but be positive.
Yes, positivity is really important.
You just sort of touched on it earlier, but the best person to do that, as you did point out, on that sort of wicket where it's not easy to just clear the boundary, is going to be Scott Edwards. So if the youngsters don't come off, it's going to be very important for him to just stabilize the innings. It just shows the importance of having that sort of individual. You don't necessarily have to clear the boundary with your top six.
Definitely not.
Yeah. So go on.
Yeah, Scott Edwards and for me, Esa Engelbrecht will be the two key players for Holland. And then I think Yeah, on the South African team, wow, it's difficult to pick one because they got so many guys. They got so many guys. But I'm a massive fan of Quinton de Kock. Just think he is an absolute phenomenal player. He might not have been in the best of forms of late, but he's amazing. I enjoy watching Reza Hendricks, a fantastic T20 player. And then I've always been a massive fan of David Miller as well. So South Africa's just got so many, and I mean Stubbs and Klaassen can really, really, really hurt you. I think there's no field big enough for them, and so South Africa's got a lot of batsmen to pick from. They're all quite attacking batsmen, so it would be interesting to see how they take on that wicket and the Dutch bowlers.
Yes. And speaking about the rest of the tournament, obviously the Dutch are going to be traveling around the USA and in the West Indies, and that's obviously going to be a big effect. But from a planning perspective, right? How do you, how should they approach all the travel? Because I think they're one of the highest travelers in the tournament. And obviously the different pitches that they're playing, which is something necessarily may play in favor of associate nation teams who have played on different wickets around the world and have traveled to not the best pitches. And I think that's what you're going to get in and around America. It's not going to be a standard, but it's going to be workable. How would you necessarily be preparing for that for the Dutch team?
Yeah, so luckily, I know they were in Dallas. Their warm-up was in Florida, actually, and then went to Dallas, played there, and now New York, and then they'll be off to the Caribbean. We had similar in Australia. I mean, Australia is so big, and we had to travel quite a bit, that I don't think it will be a big difference, because also that I've seen they've got about 3 or 4 days off before each game, so it will just give them time a little bit to settle in and definitely have a net or two before the next game and get used to the wickets again. So yeah, they just need to adapt as soon as possible when they get to the wickets. And knowing the support staff, they're definitely going to do some footage analysis on the wickets before they play, and the bowlers, so they'll be up to speed, and without a doubt they'll be ready to go.
Awesome. Final one from me. You did touch on it again. How important is it to have somebody like Tim Pringle in the squad? You had Ruloff, who's been such a stalwart for you guys, but to have somebody to come in pretty much straight away and take to international cricket as well as he has, to have such a nice sort of transition, if you like. How important has that been for the team as a general?
Oh, that's extremely important. You want to have as little disruptions as possible, obviously, and you can just see his father played international cricket, because he's got a senior head on his shoulder as a youngster. He knows his game very well. He sticks to his disciplines, works extremely hard, and he's very calm. And I think that he probably gets a lot from his father, and who's played international cricket. He's probably learned a lot from his dad, I think, and he's been phenomenal. Also, absolutely lovely guy. Loves spending time with everyone in the team, and he's a bit of a joker, and he enjoys his golf as well. So he'll definitely be on the golf course as well somewhere in this trip.
Yeah, it's all good. Stephan, last thing. It's a hard one for me to ask you this. But how do you see the match on Saturday going? Let's say this, okay, because you've already told us if the Netherlands have to win, Michael Levitt and Sabrant and all those players. Who's that fast bowler that you named?
Logan and Vivian.
Yes, Logan and Vivian have to play well, right? Yes, but it's kind of like a crystal ball moment. But if you win the toss, okay, if you're the Netherlands, what do you do at the toss?
At the toss, definitely bowl first. just because I think it's an
Definitely
early game and the wicket has been bowler friendly. So you wanna have a little bit of and Netherlands haven't played there, and South Africa have, obviously. So it will be nice for Holland just to probably bowl first, where the batters can quickly look at the wicket, what's it's gonna like, what's it gonna play like, and you hopefully, because it's a bowling friendly wicket, try and restrict South Africa to probably 140 or less, and then you can pace yourself when you're batting. Where I think if you bat first, you're not going to know what's a good score, especially having the South African batting lineup that they do have. Holland won't know what's a good score. I think it will be difficult to defend.
And from where you're sitting, what's a good score? Dependent on obviously what you've seen so far.
So what I've seen so far, I think 140 could be a good score. I don't know if the wicket will be the same, but the two games I have seen so far has been real low scoring games. So I would say 140 is probably a good score.
Yes. So if the Netherlands can bowl South Africa out for under 140, restrict them for under 140, it's game on. That's what it is. I don't want to ask you who you think is going to win because I think it's a bit unfair. Unless you want to tell me that, but I think the score kind of gives us an indication of where the Netherlands or even South Africa where the winning point is, because I think we're all vested in one. Well, you're vested in both, and I think it'd be unfair for me to say who do you think is going to win. But
I do hope South Africa wins the World Cup, though.
But you do hope the Netherlands win on Saturday, right?
I wouldn't mind Holland winning, but South Africa winning the World Cup, 100%.
We'll settle for that. We'll settle for that.
Yes, we'll take it. Yeah, Stephan, one last thing. So are you still involved in cricket? You mentioned that you were coaching the team in winter. Do you still have ties in cricket? Because you mentioned also you've got a corporate job. So just a little bit about your post-cricket life for the viewers, and then we could.
Yeah, so I have been asked by a couple of clubs to join and play again, but I was blessed with my second little princess. She was born 7 months ago. So yeah, thank you. So one's 6 years old, and the other one's 7 months, and after speaking to my wife for quite a bit, she's very supportive. She always said, "Yeah, if you want to play, still play." But after a lot of thinking, I can't see myself playing at the moment with a baby in the house and a full-time job. So then I would have to train at nights, which leaves my missus alone with the little one, and then on weekends. So yeah, it was a tough decision. Absolutely love the game. Would love to stay involved. But for now, it was best to step away. But I do love coaching. So whenever Holland is in need of a coach, I'm always keen to step in and help. I really enjoy that.
Okay, that's really, really good to hear. You've had a sight of cricket in the USA for the past month or past couple of weeks and the last month, and this is the final question. Do you think cricket can grow in the USA? There's been a lot of talk of baseball on the broadcasts, but do you think there's a place for cricket in there? And do you think that's going to be a good place for the ICC going forward in terms of growing the game?
It's actually funny. I spoke to my wife about this just yesterday. Having the World Cup in America is massive, and I think it could have been or could still be good for the game. What's a little bit disappointing, you can have a look at it both ways, is the timing of the games. I think they're playing at New York at 10 o'clock in the morning, in the weekdays, where it's nice for us as viewers to be able to follow the game straight after work. But I think the ICC's almost arranged it through, the people watching it online instead of having the crowds there, because I've seen there hasn't been a big crowd, but I think it's due to the timing of the games. And I think if you really wanted the game to grow in America, it should have been more for them. So the game should have been after work for them, where people come to the ground and watch the game. And would have been a pity for us because we would have watched at 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock in the morning. But but to grow the game in the States, I think that would have been the right choice to make. And I think your diehard cricketers, because it's a World Cup and you've got 4 group games and then quarters, I think the diehard fans would still watch the game even if it's 2 o'clock in the morning, to be honest. So I think they should have catered more for the US spectators than for the diehard fans watching it on TV. But it's, as I say, it's all my personal opinion.
Yeah. And I think from our end, I think what I believe about America is that it's a lot of eyeballs. It's massive. It can fit. Cricket can fit inside there, and it just takes a game like last week Saturday where the US won that can pique a lot of people's interest. And I think it was a good move by the ICC. It's just from the traditional cricket watching public, it's going to be a lot of getting used to pitches that aren't necessarily giving the batters something, but I'm not complaining. We just watched an IPL where people scored 250. And then on the other side, a whole lot of organizational things that traditional cricket countries know how to do. And I think it's a great place for even people who aren't in the traditional forms or who aren't in the main cricketing structures in their own main home countries. They can go try in America to see if they can't make it there. And I think we've seen with Shadley and with Andries representing the USA that's another, because obviously when you were coming through the structures, it was Holland and it was the UK, and now there's the USA, which is I think is pretty amazing for everyone else.
Yeah, definitely. I think it will be also a bit of a learning curve to the ICC as well to see how it goes, because I'm going to be in the Olympics in 2028 if I'm in LA. So there will be cricket in America again on the big stage. So I think there's definitely a lot of learning they can take away from this event and see what's where you've done well, keep that, and things where you can improve in. There's always something you can improve in. And I think that that will be key for them to take forward going into the Olympics. But yeah, definitely. I mean, just the millions and millions of people in the States, and they sport crazy. So I think cricket's got its place in the States if run well.
Yes, and
but particularly this format. This format is what they would be gravitate towards rather than what I'm interested in. But yeah, certainly.
Yes.
Definitely.
Yeah. So Stephan, thank you very much for joining us. Thank you very much for giving an insight into the Dutch team. It's going to be an interesting game going forward on Sunday. South Africa is going to have to get through their mental headaches that the Dutch have created over the last 2 games. And the Dutch have to remind themselves of how well it was to beat South Africa, and they can do it. And if they do it now, they give themselves every chance of making it into the Super 8 and being in the top 8 in the world. And who knows what else can happen. But Stephan, thank you very much.
Mpho, Tim, thank you guys a lot for having me. Always enjoy speaking to you guys.
Yes, thank you, Stephan. Thank you. Cheers. Tim, here we go. 140. Win the toss, bowl first. If South Africa loses the toss again, it's going to be squeaky bum time on Saturday night.
I think he's got it about right. I think if they score 140, it's going to be tense. If we're going on what we've seen on that pitch already, I think he's got it spot on. If they bowl well, I think they will bowl well, Netherlands. And it's just a matter of whether we will acclimatize to the conditions, the pitch, and go, we don't necessarily have to do everything for 6. We have to rotate the strike. That's
lots of running in between the wickets. Yes. From a South African perspective, do you change the batting lineup, or you go with the same 11?
No, same 11. Let's go. We're on a roll. We came off a really good win against Sri Lanka. Everybody's firing. Everybody's bowling well. Don't make any changes.
Okay. Thank you very much for everyone who's been watching and listening. Thank you to Dex. Dex mentioned that we are a very physical team, to be honest. That's the advantage we have over the Netherlands. And he wanted to ask Stephan if the Oranje are winning the Euros. So that's a comment from the Euros that are happening in June this year. But thank you to Stephan for joining us. And remember, we are on YouTube, so please like and subscribe there. Go there if you're new and you're watching me on X or on Facebook. Go to the YouTube and like and subscribe. You'll be notified when we go live. And also follow us on X, as well as do the triple threat and go to the audio platforms at Apple Podcasts and Spotify. We will really appreciate it there. Outside of that, thank you very much, Tim. Thank you very much, Stephan. Good luck to the Proteas. And yeah, enjoy the game on Saturday at 4:30 p.m. From us here at Full Quarter Podcast, it's goodbye and le sale cacajizo.